Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Language Arts Gallery. Today, we're going to continue with our academic writing and research course, and we're going to build upon our last lesson where we talked about how to write a statement of positionality. Today, we're going to talk specifically about strategies that we can use to maintain reflexivity throughout the research process. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to define and contextualize reflexivity in the academic research process. We're going to identify our own personal and positional influences. We're going to apply reflexivity strategies throughout the research process. And you'll have a chance to choose one or two of these strategies to help you write reflexive passages appropriate to your research. So today we're going to focus on 5 strategies. Let's get started and let's begin with a warm-up. I want you to think about what you're studying, and if you don't have a topic that you're currently studying, something that you're interested in studying, I want you to think about how who you are and your lived experiences impact your choice to study this topic and how you approach this topic. So with this, you can think about your personal background and your identity. How does this connect to the topic? If you were someone else with a different background, a different identity, would you approach it differently? And could your life experiences be shaping your worldview, your view of the particular problem? Not even the research context, but the problem itself. So go ahead and pause the video and jot down 2 or 3 sentences now. And we're going to come back to that at the end of the lesson. Okay, so we talked in our last video about positionality. Remember, we said this is a declaration of your social and cultural identity and how it relates to the research, how you're positioned relative to the research. Reflexivity is how you manage those things, and reflexivity is an ongoing process. So why reflexivity? Why does it matter? Well, what if we just write a statement of positionality? We say who we are. Why do we need to establish and maintain reflexivity during the research process? Well, it makes you more credible as a researcher. It enhances your transparency and it adds integrity to the research process. It's also a great tool for promoting self-awareness and getting you to be more ethically sensitive. It helps you to identify potential biases and potential blind spots in your research. So let's look at how reflexivity might help you to identify a blind spot and remain ethically sensitive. So imagine a researcher from New York City, huge urban environment, that decides to study rural schooling. And this researcher believes that there is a lack of parental interest in rural communities. Later, she realizes that this is a blind spot in her research. Her assumption was purely rooted in urban bias. From an ethical standpoint, picture a male researcher who's interviewing female survivors of trauma. Practicing reflexivity might help him to navigate issues of power, gender, and emotional dynamics ethically. So now that we've reviewed what positionality is, what reflexivity is, let's talk about 5 strategies for establishing and maintaining reflexivity in the research process. Okay, and we're going to talk about reflexive journaling, concept mapping, dialoguing with the literature, anticipating peer questions, and reflexivity tables. So first, reflexive journaling. When you're writing a reflexive journal, and this is probably the most common approach to maintaining reflexivity, think about why did you choose this topic and what assumptions do you hold? These should be assumptions that you recognize very early on in the research process. So these should be among your first entries in your reflexive journal. But you also want to talk about how your emotions and your assumptions have shifted during the research process. This is really important, and you want to maintain this as you're going through the research process. Don't just write down what your assumptions are or what led you to this research. Talk about how it changes as you're moving through the process. So here's a sample entry. As I entered the community, I realized I felt anxious about my middle class background. I feared participants might see me as an outsider. That's a very, very common feeling and common experience of people who are coming from middle class backgrounds and doing research in communities that might be underserved. Concept mapping. Concept mapping is a powerful tool. It's similar to a reflexive journal, but it's a more visual approach. This is great for people who are visual learners. You need to see something laid out on paper. You start with your research topic at the center, and we're going to look at an example in a moment. And then you branch out. You might share your experiences, your beliefs, your motivations, your fears, or aspects of your social identity. So I'm going to show you a sample here. And now I've got these 5 circles out to the side. They do not need to be the only 5 circles, and you don't need to include all of these. This is specific to who you are as a person. So for example, your social identity, that's highly complex. You might have other circles moving off to the side of that. But maintaining a concept map and updating it throughout the research process can help you to maintain reflexivity in the research process. Dialoguing with the literature. This is a really cool approach. I think it's a great way not just to maintain reflexivity, but also to ensure that you're continuing to read on the topic that you're studying. So you'll be reading articles and you'll be thinking, how does the author's view of this either align with my own view or has it differ from my own view? So ask yourself, what assumptions does the author make? Would I make those same assumptions? How do my own views influence my interpretation of what this author is saying? Would another researcher with a different identity read this differently? So really important, choose literature that relates to your study, that you're citing in your study. Choose seminal works on the topic. If you're drawing heavily on something in your research or in an article, then dialogue with that literature. Anticipating peer questions. So this is similar to dialoguing. This is dialoguing with an imaginary peer. Imagine what would a peer ask you, someone who's evaluating your research critically. What would they ask you? They might say things like, well, why did you choose this particular method? How do your beliefs affect your interpretation of this research problem or this research setting? Could somebody from another background read this differently? And they might ask you something very specific. Could someone from a lower socioeconomic upbringing, would they interpret this differently than you do coming from a middle class upbringing? Okay, so again, imagine that person being critical of you. Okay, they're going to critically read and evaluate your research. And finally, a reflexive table. This is really cool. I think, again, for people who are visual learners, people who need to have things laid out in a very organized fashion, I think this is a great approach to maintaining reflexivity. Okay, you're going to talk about what aspect of your identity is influencing the research, how it might influence the research, and how you choose to address it. Okay, this is really important because I think this kind of ties together with the other strategies that we talked about. For example, I'm a first generation student. Well, you might have a very emotional attachment to educational topics. You might feel that education's not available to everyone. You can address this through peer review or reflexive journaling. Perhaps you have a very urban upbringing. I cited an example of this earlier as a potential blind spot in someone's research. Maybe you have bias towards rural education systems as someone who grew up and studied in an urban environment. You can address this through member checking. Member checking is working with local members of the community, perhaps participants, to ensure that your interpretation of the research setting, the research problem, is in fact accurate, or if there are any shortcomings with your views. Perhaps you have a very activist orientation. You're someone who believes in a very critical approach to issues of education. Your desire for advocacy might override your need for neutrality as a researcher. So, a great way to deal with this is always checking in with your supervisor to ensure that you're maintaining objectivity, neutrality in the research process. So here you've got a sample reflexivity table. I am going to include this as a bonus lesson in my academic writing and research course. All that's available in my TPT store, which is linked in the video description. And now I want to finish up with some helpful tips before we go on to your application of these strategies. So it's a good idea to journal while you're doing your research, when it's fresh in your mind, okay? Pair journaling with your weekly research schedule, okay? Set aside a time where you are going to do it, not just when you have time. And again, doing it when it's fresh in your mind. After you have an interview, a field visit, you do your observation, write down some reflexive notes. And if you're really stuck, you can't get started, use prompts to guide your reflection. And ask yourself, these are really effective prompts. Did I name my key identities? Did I explain how they affect my research? Did I describe strategies to reduce bias? Did I write using clear, reflexive language? Okay, so now I want you to practice working with these different strategies. Choose 1 to 2 of the strategies that we covered and apply these strategies to your own research. And remember, if you don't have a research topic yet, that's fine. I want you to think of something that you're interested in studying. Whatever you choose, add it to your reflexivity table. Okay, that way you've got that organized in front of you. All right. Thank you so much. You did a great job. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment on the video, and I will see you in our next lesson at the English Language Arts Gallery.